showing it to people. And the first reaction I thought would be everybody would be happy. Oh, a new application for the internet.
Yes.
And the first reaction was panic.
In the mid-1990s, the telecommunications industry was a multi-billion-dollar regulated business. Long-distance calling could easily cost 25 cents a minute, and international calling well over $1 a minute. During this time, the internet was just starting to expand beyond universities, connecting businesses across long distances with high-speed data connections. It was now possible to pass packets of data around the world in real time. Computers were just starting to get sound cards and modems, allowing them to connect locally to wide area networks. Meanwhile, in the labs in Israel, a group of people had recognized an opportunity to pass voice over those wide area networks. Well, this is Alan Percy, your podcast host, and let me introduce you to Alon Cohen, as he tells the story of how his small business building sound cards, VocalTech, hatched an idea that eventually led to the disruption of the giant telecommunications industry. Let's join our interview with Alon at IT Expo 2019. And we're here again still at IT Expo 2019, taking a look at the history and some of the background of our industry. And none of the parts of our industry really have come to be until really the foundation was set by some basic voice over IP technology, packetizing voice into data packets, putting them on IP networks and transferring them. And one of the players that made a big role in making this all come to fruition is Alon Cohen. Alon was with VocalTech at the time, and he's with us here today. And Alon, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Alan.
Yeah. So I wanted to start our conversation with just a look back. Let's take a look back to the early days. I think it was 1997, somewhere in that area. Even before that. So let's go back there and let's talk about the genesis of voice over IP and the idea of packetizing voice.
Okay, so VocalTech did not start with voice over IP in mind. In fact, when we started, computers didn't have voice. So the first goal was and the first vision was that we would build something that adds voice to computers and then hopefully get it to any computer. Obviously, we encountered a lot of, we created the first sound card and we started selling it and figuring out different applications, We realized that you can use a remote hard drive on, another computer and play it back on another machine. So that's kind of started, hinting about what can be done with this technology. But we kept a log of things that we thought might be possible. But mainly at the time, it was more about multimedia, right? Trying to combine the video experience, audio and video, into a computer. The problem started when somebody else got the same vision, and a company by the name of Creative Labs was formed,
right,
with a lot of American marketing money and Chinese manufacturing,
right,
where VocalTech were two kids in Israel. So we got into this situation one morning where we realized that we cannot sell our product anymore because they did something very smart, which was adding this MIDI music that got them into all the gaming industry. So it took the vision of voice a bit away, but it became, but suddenly voice became much more installed in almost every machine because of that trend. So VocalTech at that moment realizing we don't have any more business selling sound cards, then we need to find something else, right? So with our backgrounds in computers, signal processing, telecommunications, real-time telecommunications from our military background, all that came to be, and suddenly we thought, what's the largest industry that we might be able to disrupt? And at the time, telecom was the biggest industry in the world. Right. And we thought, maybe we could instead of focusing on the hardware, let's be the application that would use all this audio sound cards proliferation, right? And that's how we started to think. So the first thought was, let's build a PBX. Let's build something for the organization, because internet, it was only for universities. It wasn't public yet. And I'm talking around 93, something like that. So we thought, what's the most available local area network at the time was Novell network. So the first experiment was done over Novell. And we went to a trade show in New York, at the time, Javits Center. It was big trade shows. We're showing that in a booth working on a Novell network, and the CEO of Novell is making a keynote speech and saying that voice over IP is not going to work. And we're showing it on a Novell network. So that was kind of irony.
Yeah. Those ironic moments sometimes are fun to look back at.
Exactly. But we started developing the technology. We added somewhat of small compression to the audio because computers didn't have enough CPU power at the time to do real compression. And we started, and then we even tried a different hardware compression that, because we really wanted to go to a longer distance, and longer distance meant lower bandwidth on the networks.
Right. Well, and maybe to remind people, at this time, most network connections for the consumers was still dial-up, right? And that the internet to the home, broadband internet, was a dream, but at that point it was still dial-up. So you probably were looking at, at trying to figure out a way to squeeze things into dial-up speed IP connections, right?
Correct. Well, before that, even we had the enterprise using frame relays, right, and something like that. And they had 32 kilobit per second, 64 kilobit per second, maybe. Right. The audio, but the basic audio data rate is 64 kilobit per second. So we had to compress it somehow. And we did 32 kilobit per second. And then we realized that we're getting support calls from customers, and they say, we're trying to use it between London and Paris, and it's not really working very well, and so on. And we said, click that 32 kilobit compression, and suddenly it started working.
Now hold that thought for a minute. This is where the story intersects with our episode with Jeff Pulver. If you haven't listened to that episode, be sure to hear his story on telecom disruptors.
And then we thought, that was a light bulb moment for us. We said, you know what, we need to find the biggest network in the world and try to make sure that we are ready for that. And so we converted the company we defined the company as a research center. We got connected to the internet, which was only for universities, right? We got an account. It was modem. It was 14.4. But we said, this is what we need to solve now. We need to solve for this low bandwidth, 14.4 kilobit per second and less. And solve the problem so we can transfer the voice on and give it to anybody who has internet connection. So that really puts us at the front of that technology, of that at the right time, right? Because technology that was not there, but the vision was there, and we thought that we could make it happen.
Right. And the side effect of all this was now, and just to set the stage, right? People were paying 28 cents per minute for long distance telephone calls to and from Israel or across transatlantic, and now all of a sudden organizations were, wait a second here, I can use this network that we probably are already paying for, and we can put our voice on that network. But it was, I think generally, I don't think anyone had any idea of the impact it would have on the industry. And I'm just curious, at that time, did you realize what was going to happen to the entire telecommunications industry?
Well, we were afraid that at some point they would catch up, and and maybe we lose this business as well. But once we solved the technical problems of compressing it and getting it in the right bandwidth, and we started selling it like hot bread on stores in the U.S., it became clear that it's going to be a game changer. You pay $50 one time, and you would cover all your international telephony costs, at least, between people that at the time. And and that started to pull a lot of attention and media coverage and so on. So we definitely realized that it's going to make a change. We didn't realize how big it's going to be.
Yeah, well, it certainly has made tremendous change. At this point in the industry, virtually any new investment is done on IP-based networks, and it's all done with voice over IP over various media types. But it's fascinating how this has all come together and how it's changed the industry structurally too. Right, it's made big differences. So I'm curious now. Let's just skip ahead to today. I'd love to hear what you're doing now, and then we'll talk about the future a little bit. So what are you doing now?
Well, just before this, one more interesting point. As soon as we got this, we call it iPhone at the time, by the way. It was maybe the first iPhone, Internet phone, stands for Internet phone.
Yep.
And I'm talking about 95 at the time.
Yep.
And I'm going to an IETF meeting where the basic protocols that are used today, like RTP, was still in development.
Right.
By Schultz-Rhine, and I'm showing it to people, and the first reaction I thought would be everybody would be happy. Oh, a new application for the internet.
Yes.
And we're talking about the Internet Engineering Task Force, right? The IETF. And the first reaction was panic.
Really?
Because people realized that it might become so popular that it's going to consume all the bandwidth on the internet.
Oh,
so the first thing they thought is, how do we stop this? How do we make it not work?
Mostly because of traffic concerns.
Exactly. How do we make it not work?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was the first concern. But over time with Schultz-Rhine and the SIP guy, Rosenberg, right?
Yep.
Those things, I guess, became more and more mainstream.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. Net neutrality in its early days, right? That's kind of worried about what do I do with all this traffic. So fascinating story. Well, it's been a tremendous contribution. So let's skip ahead today. So what are you working on now?
Today I'm working at phone.com, obviously still voice over IP, and we're providing hosted telephony for small businesses.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I know phone.com has gone through many iterations and improved in its quality, et cetera. What's the plan for the future? Do you see where do you see phone.com going? And then let's talk about the industry in a broader sense.
So we've been around for about 10. Well, it's just only 11 years now that I've been working at phone.com, and I was the first employee, except Ari, the CEO. So that when you ride on a technology for 10 years, it's a point where you need to start investing more in the future, in really making the technology future-proof.
Right.
And so a big effort that we're investing in now is adapting new cloud technologies, and I'm talking the most advanced technologies that Amazon is just announcing we're using them, even before they announce them, if we can get access to the trial period. And the idea is to get to the point where the platform is very network native in a sense, or cloud native, to the point where we don't have to think about the networking aspect anymore, but we can only focus on innovation and adding new functionality and new features.
Yeah.
And really compete on the rate of innovation.
Yeah. No, the migration to the cloud clearly is what most of the application developers are working on. Obviously, us at Telco Bridges with our FreeSPC platform, similarly, it's been a expedited move to move the applications and all the elements into the cloud and to utilize Amazon's infrastructure. It's been great. So, do you have a vision for where some of this is going? Obviously, the application's now in the cloud. But what about things like unified communications and even some of the CPaaS platforms and where that's going with the open APIs?
Yeah. So the few things. First, in terms of APIs, this is an amazing thing that happened to the industry, to the technology industry in general, that many applications created open APIs that allow developers to integrate and create new innovations just by combining existing applications. And this is really amazing. There are now platforms that kind of normalize those APIs, and you can basically without programming, building a Lego, connect different applications. Your Salesforce to your Google Drive, or your email to to Dropbox, or even to a phone.com application. Getting your call logs into your CRM systems and things like that without any programming.
Right.
So that's really amazing. But the one thing that I'm thinking, if we're talking about a bit on vision, is that one of the major differences in voice over IP compared to the old telephony is the fact that in the old telephony, everybody that wanted to connect had to comply with a specific type of audio quality. And yes, in voice over IP today, we use the basic, codec or the basic compression algorithm that we use in the old days as the lowest common denominator.
Right.
But the main thing is that within the voice over IP, there is this ability to negotiate at the beginning of every session, negotiate a different codec, a different compression algorithm, or a different audio quality between the two sides.
Right.
So that means that you don't have to change the whole world in order to gain a new feature. You can start pushing a new type of HD quality, right, or HD voice, which is already done. But think about more spatial type voice, where you do a conference and you can hear people in different locations, right, in different positions and things like that. Or connecting that to more holographic type of communication. So reality, really transporting the reality from one end to the other end of the world, just by the fact that you now can negotiate new type of codecs, new type of media over the same infrastructure.
Right.
So that's kind of the beauty of that, and I hope that this is where communication is going to go. Besides, the standard unification of all the media things that we do today, from text to messaging to voice and video, I want to see this becoming more of a real replacement to travel. Beyond just video conferencing, but really almost being there.
Yeah. Fascinating vision, fascinating conversation. We appreciate you spend some time with us today, and I just want to thank you so much for not only your time today, but also all the contributions you've made to the industry.
Thank you very much, Alan.
All right, thanks again. And this is Alan Percy again here. We're at IT Expo talking with Alon Cohen, who originally was from VocalTech, now at phone.com. So thanks for listening. This episode of Telecom Disruptors was brought to you by Telco Bridges, maker of FreeSBC, a virtualized session border controller for service providers and enterprise applications. Learn more at freesbc.com.